Hello and welcome to ArtShow. I'm Craig Stover, and today I have with me Marie Thibeault. Hey, Marie, how are you?
Fine. How are you, Craig?
Very well, thank you very much. I'd like to start by sharing some images of yours. And so I went through your website and I selected a few pieces that I felt were a little outstanding. And I know this is unusual to start with this piece because it's a rather smaller piece, but it packs a punch.
Hmm.
So this one, I think it was this is an earlier painting, correct?
Yeah, it's about 2017, I think, like that, 2018.
Okay.
And yeah, it's from a series of mine that I was working from the industrial shipping port of Long Beach and Los Angeles, which are two of the biggest ports in the world
Is that where
combined.
those shapes come from at the bottom there?
Yeah, these are the shipping containers. There are stacks and stacks and miles of them.
So what's the
And
blue?
and at that time, it's just I guess it's infrastructure. I would say it's a combination of just sky form activating pressure,
Mm-hmm.
and also a response to the unbelievable construction of bridges and infrastructure and cranes and
Mm-hmm.
all of that hover over the landscape.
Interesting. The reason I chose this picture is it to me it has a lot of mystery, right? So
Hmm.
there's a lot of working and what looks to be reworking of this picture until finally there's those final forms that kind of go on top. I like pictures that I can't figure out right away. And this has it for me. Like even that little light blue cloud that's sort of hovering in between the way background and whatnot. It's kind of mysterious. I like that in these
Oh,
pictures.
thank you. Thank you.
Um,
Yeah, it
but
makes
spe-
me thinks about it. It makes me think about this structure again. Yeah.
so this is flash forward several years ahead, correct?
Hmm.
And this is much larger.
It's a medium-sized painting for
Okay.
me. It's about I would say 48 inches by 46 inches.
Okay. It's a
I
healthy size.
usually, yeah, but
So
I paint usually like almost 80 inches. So this to me feels like a medium-sized painting.
I was curious to know, I have to ask because I see it appearing again and again in your works, the outline of the bird form. Where
Hmm.
where does that come from?
Well, I think the bird form has been sort of in and out of my work forever.
Yeah,
And it's a response to, just other species, the awareness that we share the world with non-human beings that are surrounding us. And, my work is a response to climate collapse and environmentalism, and it has been that way for 40 years.
mm,
So the birds in this thing are just, they're passing, and they're also sea life forms. And in some of the paintings, I was getting specific and making stencils. There are stencils
mhm.
of birds that have become extinct or are threatened species. And
Okay.
that's interwoven into like an atmospheric dynamic.
I was going to ask you about the bird species themselves because there are some birds that are very iconic and have a lot of meaning behind them, like ravens, and there's whole sort of storylines. Are you aware of those storylines for specific birds
Oh,
when you?
yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm aware of that. And also in my heritage, there was a lot of folklore,
Mhm.
French Canadian and French folklore about birds and birds being messengers and, sort of omens.
Yeah.
And not only that, but there are ravens here in the hills that we walk in Los Angeles by the harbor. And they're the same birds that have been flying around, and they remember your hat, they remember who you
Yeah.
are, they follow you. They actually follow you throughout the walk. So it's like a companion species, especially the ravens.
What was sort of perplexing to me though is you're not using these as just icons. You're weaving them into the fabric of the structure of the painting. You're almost
Mhm.
like it's like you're hiding them, but you're not hiding them at the same time. Um, are you trying to do that? Like, are you trying to make them not the subject? Is that why you're doing this?
I think the tension that you're talking about, the presence and absence, is articulated with the fact that some of them are negative shapes.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's the missing thing in the landscape, so as well as some of the positive shapes. So you know, there's always a formal reason I'm doing things,
Mhm.
you know, a painterly reason, but then surprisingly, it produces other content, you know, that you can sort of analyze later, you know, like the missing species or things that are holes in the landscape or
Mhm.
fabric of the landscape.
So speaking of surprises,
Yeah.
I wanted to show you, show people this drawing. So this is an excellent a drawing. The draftsmanship qualities are really good. I think this goes back a few years because there's some patterning in here that I don't see repeated, like the checkerboard patterning, the cross hatching kind of a thing. So I love the sort of landscape that's in this picture. It's not really in your current work. I mean, your current work, I could say they are landscapes, but there's no horizon. So I'm just curious, what am I looking at here?
This is from a whole series of drawings that I did as a response to the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina
Okay.
and the devastation that was in the landscape and what remained. So what you're seeing of the checkerboard is just a floor
Mm-hmm.
that's left and some of the remaining beams of architecture. So I collected a lot of imagery. I have a ton of source imagery. And then I cobbled together a composition from some specifics and some invention.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I was really fascinated by just the expanse of disarray that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then the series led to the rebuilding.
Mm-hmm.
So something like this is on that pivot point where it could be rebuilt because maybe those I-beams are going to stay there or not.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that kind of sort of a duality, the tension between collapse and regeneration.
When I saw this one, the word that you used is disarray. Although I see golden rectangles, I see secret geometry in this. Um,
Oh,
it led me to this, which when you talk about disarray, but there's a lot of clarity in this disarray, which sounds like a weird thing to say. Um, but this was sort of a standout piece for me, but because I think I see new elements in this one that I'm not seeing in other pieces. Um,
um, yeah, this painting, I forget the name of it. This was happening around the same time as the other one, the blue one with the birds, which is about
okay.
the flood and, you know, water coming over. So living in California, especially these years, 2018, 2019, we were starting to see the acceleration of wildfires,
Hmm.
as well as now we're getting floods. So we're going back and forth from these extremes. This is a response to a burning building from one of the major fires that
Hmm.
happened. It could have been Paradise, it could have been up in Sonoma.
Hmm.
That happened 2018, 2019, 2020 were the worst fires. So it was sort of like, again, there's infrastructure,
Uh-huh.
you can see the direct sort of golden, you know, fire thing, but also just sort of the portals are like banners to me.
Yeah.
And they could be like hope banners or maybe signals. And
Hmm.
again, the birds are in that, and that was sort of a symbolic structure as well.
Curious to know when somebody would say, purchase a piece like this, um, do they walk away with just a mystery about the picture, or are you making sure that they know? I mean, the backstory that you just told me was really fascinating about fires and floods, and that I can now see this picture in a different way. Do you make sure that the owners know these stories?
Well, I mean, the galleries are the ones selling the paintings, so I'm not sure exactly what they're telling them,
Okay.
but it's certainly in my artist statement, you know,
Okay.
and everything that I write, and it's indicated in the title oftentimes too.
So the last piece I wanted to show you, this painting, I think this is a knockout. I really love the mark making, the invention of marks in this. And I don't know if it's because it does have some sort of a horizon line in it, but I'm enthralled by this painting because I see so much. It makes me want to keep looking more and more at this picture. This is a larger piece.
It's
Yes?
very large. This one's
Yeah.
one of the largest ones, and it's sold. I wish I had this painting in a way. It was a huge struggle, and again, this shape in the bottom right.
Yeah.
It is a shape I used several times. It's what remained of a swimming pool.
Swimming pool. Yeah, that's
And I think it was Mississippi as it went across. And then you can see the, sort of foundations of
Yeah.
the architecture going back.
Uh-huh.
And then the suspended structures, I think, were an experiment to try to get more abstraction, more verticality, and maybe
Hmm.
capture a time element of things shifting in time.
I know you said it was a struggle, but I don't know for about you, but I enjoy the struggle. I mean, so for me, if there's no struggle, the pictures always seem to fail. You, do you?
Yeah, I agree with you. I like paintings that are hard won,
Yeah. Yeah.
or that you can tell there's
Give it a
been some
one-two
kind of,
punch, right?
yeah, I love you, I hate you, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Would you, if you had your druthers, would you work that large all the time or larger?
Um, no, I think there's a pacing. I prefer winning a painting at that scale, when I really commit to it. But you can't just stay on the large paintings because that goes sort of neutral too. So
Yeah.
working small then helps you to bounce back to the scale. So I work best large, but I have to shift around, and I have a really vigorous drawing practice, which
Hmm.
is sort of small.
Yeah.
So that helps me to then, attack the larger paintings with sort of clarity,
I would love to see more of your drawings on your website. You had a couple, but I would love to see more because I love drawing as a foundation for everything. Honestly, it's just so delicious when I can see artists. They seem to have almost less fear when they're drawing for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah, and I draw things that I would never paint. Like,
Yeah, right.
like I know, like right before the eclipse, like the day before, I was
Uh-huh.
anticipating what's it going to be like. And so I just did a series of like 6 collage drawings, 7, whatever. And it was sort of like, okay, I have my moment. It was just
Right.
sort of, I'm not going to paint that, but it was,
But it's worth a drawing. I got you.
yeah, exactly.
I want to ask you about your beginnings in art. So one of the questions I love to ask artists is, can you remember a first exposure when you were young to art, something that really stuck with you and blew you away?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was very early because I went to an art high school, which had a
Okay.
museum. I was really lucky. But one memory that's just pretty mysterious is there was this station or barn. I grew up in rural Connecticut, kind of the woods, that was kind of a burned out building.
Hmm.
And we used to play around it. And I remember climbing in, and there was all of a sudden an artist studio in there, and there was the mystique of the paint and the easel, and it was
Hmm.
silent, and it was a whole thing that just like hit me like a ton of bricks. I just
Wow.
like, that is what I want to do, and I was just
Yeah.
very little.
This is an odd question. Have you ever read Vonnegut's Breakfast of Champions?
May have, not that I remember
Yeah,
it
go
right
back
now,
and read
but
it. That whole artist in the barn thing. I
all
think
right.
you would love that. So at what point did you decide I'm going to be an artist?
Really early. I mean, I had no wavering. It was like 8th grade, I decided I was painting. And then
Okay.
but by the time I went to high school, like I said, the local high school, Norwich
Uh-huh.
Free Academy, had a museum and had an art school within it. So I went right into learning everything, drawing, heavily drawing, printmaking, everything. And it was a great foundation, and went back from there to Rhode Island School of Design, which was also heavily structured. But along the way, I realized I didn't learn geography very well, or I didn't learn, finance, or how to
Uh-huh.
cook, or anything else.
Right. Did you have anybody in particular who really sort of lit your fire? Anybody who was just outstanding and pushing you in a direction?
Oh, so many mentors. I mean,
It was a combination of everybody
series of
together.
mentors that I realized were, you know, milestones for me, and just people that I wanted to emulate. And that's why I became a teacher, and a professor of art, because I considered myself just, link in the chain, basically.
Hmm.
Just I'm just here to pass it on, kind of
That's
thing.
I like that.
And yeah, I mean,
Um,
I remember Joan Brown was a mentor of mine, and Elmer Bishop as well.
okay, all right. See,
Yeah.
that's very telling. I mean, I know their work, so I can see glimpses of it.
Yeah, there's more of
Some
a
of them.
Northern California, I think, influence on my work, even though New England landscape painting is like the foundation of it, I would say.
I want to ask you about your process. So, first question, obviously, is do you keep a sketchbook? Do you sketch out your works, or is your canvas the sketchbook?
I don't keep a sketchbook. I keep a written journal, and my photography is like my sketches. So I photograph on the iPhone every day, my walks, some
Mm-hmm.
anomaly. I print it up. I make transparencies that I can look at and project on the old fashion machine,
Mm-hmm.
opaque projector, whatever. And then the drawing slash collage is the way I generate images. But I don't
Do,
actually sketch something or repeat anything.
do the drawings then inform the paintings, or are they separate?
The drawings inform the paintings. They're like a testing ground. It's sort
Okay.
of like, will this work?
Mm-hmm.
But they're in black and white because I don't want to work the ideas out in color in the
It's the
drawing.
structure that you need to make
Yeah.
sure that that works. Yeah, I get it. So you're in your studio, you want to make something new, you have all these source materials. Where where do the ideas come from? Another, no, not really. Where does the creativity come from? What sparks that creativity?
So it's has to do with initial insight or experience of being in a place in the landscape, like a view. I mean,
Okay.
it still is like, ooh, that's click in my brain. Plus reading about things like, you know, the jet stream is
Mm-hmm.
slowing down, or the Earth's axis is shifting, or these kind of bigger concepts.
Mm-hmm.
These come in and create sort of the turbulence in the structure, but the actual intimacy of being in the landscape, and like recently the ones that are about like fire and regrowth, are just like, I see it. I see the palm tree that turned black. That is
Mm-hmm.
now
Mm-hmm.
green. That kind of thing. And I want to record something intimate, but also make and allude to what's really the bigger issue. It's going on
Mm-hmm.
globally.
As you're working on a, a piece, say you're working on a painting, is there I find most artists set up rules for themselves about, well, here's the colors I want to use, and here's the size I want to do. How often are you breaking your own rules mid-picture?
Always. Uh,
Always.
always. It's always basically contradicting what happened the day before. There's so much responsive, intuitive, digging for surprise. I just, curated this show called Risky Business at the Torrance Art Museum. And it's all about risk and chance in the process.
Mm-hmm.
So, I try to keep each painting like a poetic, its own color, its own sort of place, its own little story. They are have a narrative story to them in a sense, even though
Oh
they're
yeah,
abstract.
yeah, I
Yeah.
can definitely see that. And I
Yeah.
think that's what makes your kind of abstraction different from a lot of like the current trends is just to pour the paint, whatever happens, happens. And but that's
Mhm.
boring to me. I'm much more interested in, you know, what I like about your work is when I walk away, I have more questions than I had when I began.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think
thank
that's
you.
really very fascinating.
Thank you.
So what I'm getting, hearing is that you do have some basic ideas, but then as the painting progresses, you're wide open to experimentation.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of painters will talk about this process where, you prompt and you respond to and then all of a sudden it starts talking back, and then it takes over.
Yeah.
And then you're just in this place of vulnerability where you're listening and trying to figure out it's like puzzle solving. It
Mm.
really is. When it gets to a certain place, then it's just trying to get the right pieces to click in.
How do you think your work has changed over the years from when you first started to now?
Well, I think in many, many ways. I mean, how far back are we going to go? I've been doing this for so long. But like just even when I've been in LA, working with the port and the industrial image, it was really like a little bit of separation,
Uh-huh.
and a sense of there is the infrastructure, the expansive industrial complex, it's this big, huge, sublime monster out there.
Right.
And then I retired from teaching, so I don't do the same drive through that landscape. I'm not exposed to that landscape. So then it's changed. It's become more like sympathetic and more about innuendo that I'm actually experiencing.
Hmm.
But I've always kind of grappled with the idea of the sublime, and more recently, the feminine sublime, which is about immersion and co-participation. And that brings you back to, like, you know, plant forms and animal forms and other things that are participating rather than the man-made landscape.
Hmm. Hmm.
But ironically, abstraction, I was thinking about this today, like abstraction, the best abstraction has that architectural bone in it, like the first painting you showed, that has like the fact that it's architectural within that rectangle is what makes that work,
Hmm.
those
Hmm.
geometries. So
Right.
yeah, so I'm aware of that, and how that is a great device, and maybe thinking about pulling more of that in along with the organic. What I'm trying to deal now is like a strong painting that has a lot of organic elements,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's not easy.
No. Well,
Mm.
one of the things that I always think is a challenge with that is incorporating color, right? So how does color fit within that? So the big question I want to ask you is, this is might be a huge question. What do you think about color?
Oh my God. How do I think about color? What do I think about color? I was just thinking, I know I got to put on my Instagram page. It's like, you know, drawing is my language, color is my religion, something like that,
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
um, I taught color theory. I invented this color theory class that was pretty successful. I taught color theory for 30 years for painters
Hmm.
specifically
Hmm.
with symbol. I mean, I have too much knowledge about color. So I try to keep it to be intuitive for me,
Right.
and I want it to be, um, evocative of a landscape, but also to pull in haptic and emotional and physical feelings, like the body is in the landscape. So a lot of times you'll see red paintings or that are landscape, but I feel like you just can't make green paintings for the rest of your life. So what am I doing with the color? The color is pretty symbolic or emotive, or either representing industrial stuff, or the temperature of something. So that there's a symbolic, abstract element. I try to keep the drawing and the colors separate.
Hmm.
So the color is not describing things. It
Has your
is,
Would
it's
you say your
abstract.
color has changed over the years? Because from what I saw, and obviously I've only seen a small piece of it, it almost looks like you had a love affair with a heavy saturation of color, but lately you've been changing the values. But I mean, you still
Oh,
start with
yeah,
the
that's true. And that's like my attempt to get drawing to be clearer, so that in the end, like, I can solve anything with color. Like,
Mhm.
all right, I'm sick of this painting, throw the
Right.
color on it, you're done. But what I'm trying to do is get the drawing to as poignant as possible, articulated within
Mhm.
the. And in order to really do that, you have to let go of some of the saturation and let the value dominate.
Yeah.
So now I'm kind of like my most recent one, Wild Gravity, that red painting is just, it's kind of monochrome with a lot
Mhm.
of different varieties of red, but the drawing is much more, able to be read within that field.
Speaking
So
of titles, do your titles come before, during, or after?
during, sometimes
During.
before. Sometimes before, like when I start, it'll be like, I listen to a lot of music. So I'll hear a lyrics, or like Wild Gravity is a Talking Head song, as
Okay. Do
yeah,
you have to have music on when you're working?
pretty
Yeah.
much the whole
Yeah.
time. And I listen, and I'm always like Spotifying new stuff. Like I'm like
Hmm.
a music junkie, really.
Hmm.
And so then I like, oh, gravity, well, gravity, da, 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 da. And then I'll do this free association, sometimes a whole page. And then that'll give me an idea for the next painting.
Hmm.
Like I just had this this big pink and crazy painting that happened before the pandemic. It was kind of prophetic, but I named it uh, Gravity's Angel, and that is actually the Laurie Anderson song about,
Mm.
gravity and this
Yes,
angel
that's
that's kind
right.
of how
Wow, that takes
vulnerable
me
we
back.
are. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, they kind of feed each other, Yeah.
So one of the things you mentioned early on, you were talking about your education and you mentioned printmaking. I see a lot of your work done in these layers, which is a very printmaker way of thinking. I'm curious to know, have you made prints recently? No. Would you ever go back into it?
If I had time, I would love to. I'm a frustrated printmaker who never did printmaking. This is
Oh, I
like
would
serious.
love to see you have
I know, like monoprints or whatever. I know it's like for some reason I was, not. I mean, every time I tried to make prints, something got in my way, like this barrier, this barrier. But
uh,
my friends are printmakers too, so I understand the process.
they have
And
printmaking
so
studios, so go use their studios.
yeah, I know.
That'll be
I should. It's a matter of carving out time and just
okay.
doing,
All right. Well, I look
really.
forward to that. I'm going to hold you to that. So, aside from printmaking, are there other disciplines that you've ever wanted to go into, say, sculpture, photography, poetry, anything like that?
Photography for sure.
Yeah.
Photography.
Well, you mentioned photographs as source materials, but you would consider just doing photographs as an own
Yes,
show.
yes, I
Okay.
would because my photographs are pretty good. And
Okay.
like I got nobody to show them to, but like
Put
my
them up
husband.
on your website. I want to see them.
Oh, really? I should.
Yeah.
I should. I
Yeah,
mean,
that would be interesting to see.
they're landscape, like really, they really capture composition. I just get these really interesting compositions. So,
So, we have time for just one more question. Question I ask almost every artist. What does making art do for you?
oh, well, it's a learning experience. It helps you grow and become more aware. It's extremely entertaining and interesting. It serves a lot of purposes. You feel like you're really working for something bigger than yourself. It's not an egotistical thing. I feel like many times like I'm just a channel, and that my job is to maintain that. And you feel like you're at service, which has been a part of my sort of motivation my whole life. And it's just pure joy to discover new things all the
Hmm,
time,
I'm with you.
Yeah, and it's also super gratifying when somebody gets it, like even you understand my work. I'm like, really? That's such a great reward. And
Hopefully,
most
you won't have to go all the way across the country to find other people.
yeah, but no, most of the time you really don't get that
Yeah.
feedback. So when you do, it's very exciting that you've actually communicated something.
Well, Marie, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk with me today. I really appreciate it. I've learned so much about your work. Now I have to go back and have a second look. And I want to
Oh,
thank everybody who tuned in to watch Art Show today. Of course, we love it when you like, share, and subscribe. That really helps support Art Show. And so if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment section. If we can't answer them, we'll just pass them along to Marie. So again, Marie, thank you very much. I really
thank
appreciate it.
you. Thank you for contacting me. I really enjoyed this.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.